Welcome participants and our speaker, Professor Narsingh Jha. I welcome you for the second day of a 5 days long online Atal FDP on multidisciplinary research in the field of fluids. So as the theme of this our online FDP suggests, we try to give the theme of the day, and the keynote speaker for today's day is Professor Narsingh Jha. And today's theme is basically on the environmental fluid mechanics. So I we are going to conduct a very distinguished talk and a very interesting talk in this field. So our first speaker, I welcome our first speaker, Professor Narsingh Jha. Before the start of second session, let me briefly introduce our speaker. So Dr. Narsingh Jha is an assistant professor in the Department of Applied Mechanics at IIT Delhi. He is an experimentalist and work on the behavior of turbulent in different type of flows due to its fundamental challenge it poses and its immense practical relevance. He is broadly interested in two-phase turbulent flows, environmental fluid flows, complex flows, droplet dynamics in turbulence, cancer cell dynamics in vascular system, microfluidic, and flow over the blood bodies. Before joining to IIT Delhi, he was a PBC VTAT postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Physics of Complex System at Weizmann Institute of Science, Israel. He studied the stability mechanism and elastic turbulent characteristic in elastic plane Poiseuille flow. He has completed his first postdoctoral work at University of Cambridge, UK, and work on environmental fluid dynamics. Specifically, he focused on the various aspects of air curtains in hospitals and commercial buildings, and also on the hydraulic jump. He completed his doctoral work in Department of Mechanical Engineering, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and worked on the two-phase flow and microfluidics. Dear participant, with this brief introduction to our speaker, Professor Narsingh Jha, I would like to welcome him to address our participants. Dr. Jha, you're most welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Kishore, for the nice introduction, and thank you for the invitation to talk about environmental fluid dynamics in ICT Atal Yojana. So today I'll be talking about environmental fluid dynamics, and soon we'll see its scientific as well as practical relevance. I'm Narsingh Kumar Jha, and as introduced by Professor Kishore, I'm at IIT Delhi. So the outline of my talk would be, first I'll talk about introduction and the scope of today's talk. Then I'll move on to natural convection, gravity currents, and air currents, which is associated to building flows. Then I'll get into more nitty-gritty of ventilation strategies and guidelines, where I'll talk about importance of ventilation and why it's very important in today's scenario. After that, I'll briefly talk about different measurement techniques in geophysical flows, which will be advantageous for a lot of the participants to start working in this area. Then I'll talk about other aspect of geophysical flow, which is mostly found in oceanic flows, that is bubbly turbulent flow. Then in the between of all this, I'll here and there will keep talking about future scope for young researcher like you. So please feel free to stop me wherever you have any questions regarding the presentations or the scope of work or the measurement techniques. So this is very interactive talk. I don't see it like research seminar talk. This is more of a interactive talk. So just stop me wherever you think that you need either some clarification or you need some more thoughtful questions over there. So the broad scope of environmental fluid flow, obviously one is in ventilation flow. So say if there is an office building or any building, how do we ventilate it in different climates? Other part, obviously, which is very important in Indian context, is air pollution. And how do we study, mitigate, and get rid of this air pollution problem? because it has big health consequences which country like India is paying. And which we have seen last winter also when we had air pollution and COVID. Yeah. And third is geophysical fluid dynamics and ocean waves and meteorology. I'll talk a bit about two-phase flows which we find in oceanic flows. And obviously the fourth one is cloud dynamics, because the complete cloud formation to rain is governed by fluid dynamics. Most of it is governed by fluid dynamics. So now let's start. Let's look at the global temperature. And if you look global change in global temperature with airways, so we can clearly see that global temperature is increasing, and it has been increasing quite drastically once we had, a strong industrial revolution around 1960s, 70s, something like that. Oh, yeah. And then it doesn't seem to stop in nearby future. And if it doesn't stop, then what happens? First thing is the first consequence. If the temperature rises, then what will happen is glaciers would melt and low-lying lands will start to flood. And the first thing is, like, near the coastal area, you will have, less lands available for occupation or vegetation. And whatever land is occupied, if water is over there, then all the civilization which living over there will have to face consequences. And those consequences are very severe, and we don't realize how severe it can be till the time we don't face it. So imagine somebody's house is flooded. Okay, where does he go? Okay. And for rich people, sometimes it's relatively easy, but if it's rural areas, then getting the resource out is not easy. Then what you do? You live at the roof of your house. Okay, and it's not easy, flooded by rain, and sun is not nice to you, and where do you get the food? Complete land is flooded. So it's a scary situation. And I have personally seen some of these things, so I can relate it to that. And so that's about rural part. If you come to urban part, then obviously, not only your home is flooded, your roads, your cars, everything is flooded, and where you go, you don't know. Okay, and even reaching relief is not very easy once it's flooded. So how do people reach you? Okay, and the problem with urban flood is that population is so vast that especially city like Mumbai and all, population is so vast that even for the system to reach to every people is almost next to impossible in the country like India. Okay, so then we need to understand it. We need to try to stop it, or we need to find the ways around it. Okay, and for that, young researchers like you is very important. Okay, and as some of these problems are, bit of it is also in Indian context, so Indian researchers has to solve it. And second, as temperature rises, what happens? Okay, so if temperature rose, then you will have cold crunch, because now you need cold. How do you create cold? You pay, bill for that. You pay energy price for that. And with energy price, again, comes the irreversible process of global warming and climate change. Okay, so, and then thus what is important? We need a policy to stop or minimize the soaring cooling energy demand. Okay, so every citizen of country cannot afford to run their AC at 16 degrees centigrade, because you feel equally comfortable at 26, 27. Try to run AC in your room at 26, 27. It's very similar to what what comfort you get at 16 apart from having a blanket. Okay, so if it's summer, you don't need blanket. You can run your AC at 27. And then policy is needed for that. Okay, so there has to be some intervention from the policy side. And some of these guidelines are suggested by International Energy Agency from 2017, understanding some of these situations of world energy consumption in building, and see how it's rising continuously. Okay, and then that is first we need policy, but at the same time we need better energy efficient buildings. Okay, so that's where fluid dynamic researcher like us will play a role. Okay, we need to understand and we need to optimize the energy performance of the building. Okay, and then we also need concrete policy to control cooling energy demand. Okay, so then we have to fix somewhere that how much energy we spend in building cooling and other things. Okay, so there is, there is one net control and there is one local control, and both has to be done. Okay, so we need a global cap that more than this much of energy we are not going to spend on cooling, and then at locally in every home we need to control keep these temperatures are not required. And for that, one very important thing is like public education. Okay. And that's where also our role come in. Your words will be more heard compared to somebody else's word. Okay, society accepts that you are educated, so we have that responsibility also to educate the society. Okay, and comes the next consequence, that is, so in 2021, Hasselmann got the Nobel Prize with others. Okay, and that was related to obviously global warming and climate change. And the area in which he used to work is fluid dynamics. So see one of his initial paper, coupled ocean atmosphere models with flux correction. And then in 2020, he extrapolated these lines that in 2000, he extrapolated these lines in his science paper that in 2020, which kind of global temperature rise we are going to have. And some of these extrapolations seems to be correct. Okay. And if you work in that area, then obviously, fluid dynamicist is getting the Nobel Prize. And another big problem apart from climate change is air pollution. So that is next area where I see that one day Nobel Prize will be awarded. And country like India, which is facing a huge problem with air pollution, has large scope to work in this area. And so that's the positive consequence. And then now let's see at how much energy do we invest in buildings compared to transportation and industry. So if we see metric tons of carbon release from different sectors, so you see that transportation is almost half than buildings, and industry obviously is half than transportation. So a lot of energy is spent, or a lot of carbon is being emitted from here. So we need to take care for this. We need to understand it, optimize it, as I was telling earlier. So now, how do we optimize this? How do we realize, this carbon? Where do the energy comes from? So we have to readily source available rather than depending on fossil fuels like carbon and all. And I would just like to remind the participants over here that it took billion years to create these fossil fuels, and we, the human civilization, have almost emptied it in less than 300 years. And with the optimistic evaluation, in the next 75 years, we'll go out of fossil fuel. Okay, so we need to depend on other source of energy, and which is readily available to all of us without any disparity by the system or the nature. One obviously is wind because of the pressure distribution and the coastal place and mainland. So wind is freely available to us, sun is freely available to us. So, and then we need to optimize it. If sun gives us heat, sun gives us summer, increased temperature, then it also gives us enormous opportunity to extract energy from here and to mitigate some of our need or fulfill some of our need. And now let's look at buildings, as I was talking about. So let's look at first air-conditioned building, which was built almost 150 years ago. That's Larkin Building in New York, Buffalo. So you see this building, okay, this used to have thick concrete walls and a lot of windows, okay. And those has advantages. Thick concrete wall means, they are almost insulated, so you don't have a lot of energy leakage. And second, you don't have solar radiation, a lot of radiation reaching to it, because thick wall will minimize the radiation. And third, you have windows. Even, if weather is good, you can open it up, okay. Now, contrast to that, if we see the modern day building, this is one of the glass building which we have made in India by our architect, okay. So now you see thermal mass here, it's nothing, solar radiation can directly go in. There is nothing to even insulate. If you have made it cool, you have a lot of energy leakage from here. And where is the window? Okay, if weather is good, still your AC is running. Okay, if there is one occupant in the room, your AC is still running. Why can't we open the window? Where are windows? Okay, so we need to think about it. And look is one thing, I can appreciate this building also. Look is human perception, right? So it should be eye-pleasing, but eye-pleasing cannot cost us in such a way that tomorrow our Earth becomes non-livable. So we need to pay attention to that. So now specifically look into building flows. Okay. So if we look at some classical fluid dynamics problems, so say if there is flow behind a sphere, so most of the dynamics is governed by the boundary conditions or the geometry of the sphere. Or if we look at metrology, then boundary condition almost becomes irrelevant, and most of it is internal dynamics with what takes place because of the boundary condition, bigger boundary condition posed by nature or energy. Now in buildings, you have both. You have a strong internal dynamics inside the buildings and outside, because building is placed in atmosphere. And then you have huge geometry effect also. Okay. And so this then becomes more complicated than any classical fluid dynamics problem or even meteorological problem, which you think is a really tough problem. So building flow then probably is tougher than both, because it's combination of both. And it's not linear combination. Navier-Stokes is such that it doesn't let it live with linear things in most of the places. And then they interact non-linearly. So then there are some saying that it's more tougher than rocket science, or it's the toughest problem humankind ever faced in fluid dynamics. Okay, so then we need to work on it, because I showed you in my previous slides that there are a lot of repercussion and reaction on how we respond to our system. So now let's look at building flows specifically. So if you look at ventilation, then how can flow take place in a building? Okay, obviously if there is a temperature difference between indoor and outdoor, there will be flow set by temperature. Or if windows are open and wind can take place, then there will be flow set by wind. So if flow is set by temperature, then there are typical ventilation type, which is called displacement ventilation, mixing ventilation. Okay, where it's taking place because of temperature. If it's driven by wind, then I'm sure you all have heard about cross ventilation and single-sided ventilation. Okay, again, this too is readily available to us. But sometimes it's not very easy, because you see, in summer, if the outside temperature is also very high, then what do you do with natural ventilation? How do you open the window? Okay. Either you can, even if it's either temperature driven or wind driven, opening the window at 45 degrees centigrade temperature outside, you are not going to feel comfortable. Okay, because if somebody blows air at 45 degrees centigrade to your body is at 37 degrees centigrade, so you're not going to feel comfortable there. So then there is more to it just apart from natural ventilation, but a lot of it works relatively well for winter. Okay, and ventilation has this one aspect. Now I'll come to other aspects of ventilation. Why do we need ventilation? It's like, say there is a human sitting over here, and we roughly release 100 watt. So 100 joule per second we all are releasing as heat. That's like, in current day scenario, if you take 50 watt bulb, so 2 bulb you are burning every time on your body. Okay, no wonder humans are lighting. And roughly you need 10 liter per second of airflow to remove out the carbon dioxide which you are releasing in the room. So imagine if this room is closed full with carbon dioxide, and you will feel suffocated because of that. And it has been shown that higher level of carbon dioxide also affects your productivity and your human behavior. Okay, so now you need this airflow not only for comfort and other things, you need it to flush out the carbon dioxide which you are releasing wherever you are living. Okay, so ventilation is needed for that, to get in the fresh air to release the carbon dioxide also. So even though you feel comfortable or not, running the air condition on in circulation mode is not good when you are sleeping at night, because your room will be filled with carbon dioxide. So you need to open your windows at some frequent time interval to make sure that you have enough fresh air, or CO2 is diluted such that it's healthy and breathable. Okay, so with that, I'll just show you that how do 100 watt bulbs around us. So see the airflow around human body. So this is a typical human, and so if we look at, see the flow pattern around it. This has been visualized by color scintigraphy. Okay. So this is when a human is static. Soon, slightly later, I'll talk about human wake and other things. But see what you are releasing every time. Okay. So if we make air visible around us, one problem with air is it's invisible. So a lot of time it's hard to appreciate what you are breathing. But I am sure that if somehow we can, make it visible, a lot of it is very black and white view that what you are breathing. So this is only the density field. If you look at particulate matter and other thing, and if I show you how much carbon dioxide and other thing is there, sometime in some situations you can be terrified what you are breathing. Okay, so we have to be cautious about that. And to look at some interesting fluid dynamics problem around this area, that how do one vortex or flow structure behaves and mixing takes place. So I'll start from the beginning and explain. So there will be a vertical structure coming from there, which you can think of as typical flow structure. And there is some fluid line over there, which is red in color. And let's look at the mixing amount too. And as now you can see that this mixing is very important for a lot of what we are going to talk. And what you saw over here is plume released from the respiratory system when she is breathing. This one, okay, yes, this plume. If you look at that, then when it travels forward in direction, it entrains a lot of fluid from surrounding, and because of that, volume flux changes and temperature decreases with height. So those are the information which will be needed for even in either industrial or environmental plume or plume released by human, or sometimes plumes, we use for fundamental studies. So now let's look at the flow. So we looked at flow of a human, around a human. Now let's look at flow in a building. Then we'll try to couple both. Okay. So now imagine there is a warm room inside and there is cold air outside, which is going to be the condition in winter, which is going to come very soon. And now if you open a door over here, and if you open the door over here, what is going to happen is some hot fluid is going to come out and cold fluid is going to go in. So these are the hot fluids, these are the cold fluid which has gone in. And this particular setup is, this movement is called gravity current, because the flow current has been set up by gravity due to density difference. So this is called gravity current, and we'll talk more about that. But now you see there is some energy which you had put in to warm your room is being lost when you open the door. Okay? And this is the very typical scenarios in cold and winters. And then how do we minimize this? How do we stop this? First, we understand how this mixing takes place. Then we'll try to understand how we have stopped it. These are the work which I have been doing along with my students, and some of this work which I'll show you is of my student. Okay, so the first point which plays over here is there is a density difference across the doorways. And the moment there is mixing, there is not only loss of heat, there is also ingress of moisture, dust, pollutant, bacteria, flies, and even so if you look at Indian climate, if your room, you have cleaned it up by some air filter, and then the moment you open doors, some unfiltered air came into your room. Okay, so that is like extra pollutant will come in your building. Okay, so you have loss of energy and loss of quality of air. And the amount of flux, volume flux, which is important for energy and air quality, is written by 1/3 discharge coefficient multiplied by open area under root G prime. G prime is non-dimensional gravity, which depends on the density difference. This is basically called the orifice equation in fluid dynamics. So now I'll be presenting some work of Tanmay, who is also attending this seminar, and this work has been done by him on lock gate or gravity current. So we have hot and cold fluid over here, and we are going to understand how these two mix. So we are only visualizing this part. So the blue part is beside this. So for better resolution, we are only seeing white part and some green fluid is coming in. That is gravity current. Sorry, some blue fluid is coming. Let's have a look at this blue fluid. So this blue, which is traveling from left to right, is gravity current, and you can see nice AD at the interface because of velocity and density mismatch. That's like typical Kelvin-Helmholtz instability. So now it hits the wall. Just for the beauty of video, let's have a look at it again. This is from the experiments. So you see this KH-like instability setting up at the interface and this gravity current traveling. This is a very fundamental model of studying, first fundamental model of studying building flows. So now I'll move to the next slide where laser-induced fluorescence has been used. Obviously, there we had a bigger field of view, over here we have a small field of view, but let's have a look at it. So again, gravity current is coming from left to right, and again you see that on the bottom gravity current is coming, and you can see the AD over here. So you can see very nice AD setting up over here. So now those were the experiments. Now we'll look at some simulation which Tanmay has been doing recently. Is again two different density fluids and conditions are given over here. G prime is roughly 59 millimeter per second square. So, and these are some of the grid independence studies from there. And let's look at temperature contour. So two temperature difference, let's look at how do they work. Here again, it's 2D simulation, so you can see very nice Kelvin-Helmholtz instability setting up over here and breaking up into higher nonlinear instability of those eddies. And if you look at turbulent dissipation, which is like loss of energy, total. So again, you can see wherever you have eddy at that point, you have a strong turbulent dissipation setting up over there. So that was the building flow when the gate is opened. Now once as we open the gate, I was telling you that we have loss of energy and loss of air quality. So what can we do with that? So let's have a look at another interesting fluid dynamics solution for this. So now we have one air barrier over here. So we blow the air from top to bottom. Okay. And this air, because of the momentum flux, it's going to behave as barrier because it won't let this fluid, these two fluid mix. So this is artificial fluid barrier which we put over there. And the barrier, the advantage with this barrier is even though door we have to open for passage of human and vehicle, with this barrier now human and vehicle can pass easily, but these fluids can't pass. So these are like, so barriers for fluids, not for humans or vehicles. Again, this is very good. It has very good utilization in hospitals also, because in hospitals a lot of time you don't want. So imagine there is a COVID patient here, okay, and then you don't want any of the viruses to go out, but door has to be opened for doctors and nurses to get in, or healthcare worker to get in. So with this, doors are open, but then there is no mixing of fluids between inside and outside. And in this COVID, you must have heard about that in hospitals. There were a lot of serious COVID cases, and transmission was relatively much higher in hospitals. Okay. So with those now, let's look at the fundamental fluid dynamics problem with this. So there is one, high density fluid over here, there is low density fluid over here, and this cylinder, passage of this cylinder simulates the passage of human or vehicle or healthcare worker in hospital like scenarios. Okay, now we have to see first distinguish the difference between building and hospitals. So in typical building, what will happen? So say if it's summer outside, then you have high density fluid inside, cold air inside, hot outside. So this simulates a building. But for hospitals, density is same between two rooms because those are part of single building. What is different is contaminant. So in one case, you might have virus, another case, you may be a virus-free environment. So there you need a passive tracer which can be behave like, which can be tracked as virus, and I'll talk about how did we do that. Okay. So the first condition over here, fluid dynamics non-dimensional number, is what is the jet momentum flux and what is the buoyancy force across the air curtain. The ratio of these two, jet momentum flux by stack force due to buoyancy difference. A stack force is typically used for buoyancy force because density usually they are stacked. High density is always at low, low density is at higher this one. So they are stacked. So people have been using a stack force multiple times to interpret it to buoyancy forces. And another thing is effectiveness. So if there was no air curtain, there were some exchange of fluid. And because of air curtain, how much amount of fluid exchange you have stopped as compared to the no curtain case. So it's like flux in open conditions minus flux in curtain conditions. That is how much amount of flux has been stopped divided by the flux in the open condition. That's like effectiveness of air curtain. Let's look at a condition of, so this is air curtain, this is one high density fluid, this is low density fluid, and we'll see a passage of a cylinder. So the blue colored dye is used to track air curtain, and soon we'll see red colored dye is used to track the wake of human. Let's pay attention to human wake. You have seen the stratification around human in the video which I shown of the lady. This time you will see the wake of human. So when human is moving, how much wake they are carrying forward. Unfortunately, usually we don't see that, so we don't appreciate it. But looking at this video, you can appreciate that. Please have a look at it. So there is air curtain separating two sides. And now a cylinder is coming from here with red color fluid in the wake to distinguish the wake. And this jet is broken. Now you see jet is establishing, and now you have a wake behind it which has been carried. So this extra wake which has been carried, that reduces the effectiveness of air curtain, and we are interested in that, okay? Because of presence of human, how much effectiveness has been reduced, or for say hospital, how much extra exchange of contaminant has taken place, which may be a carrier of virus. So now this is effectiveness versus deflection modulus. So the red symbol is for the base case, so just air curtain, and you can see that you have almost 80% reduction in exchange because of the presence of air curtain. But now, as these three are for three different human speed, so human speed is non-dimensionalized by the jet speed. So as human speed increases, your effectiveness starts reducing more and more because of the stronger wake behind the human due to higher velocity. Excuse me, I need some water. So now in hospitals, as I was telling you, that density is same. Contaminated air and fresh air has same density. Okay, but inside you have contaminant. Now when this, say, human passage or healthcare worker passage, you want to see how much fluid has gone out. Now to do that, what you have to do is you take, say, two different densities, same density fluids. Okay, so what you do is you take sugar water outside and salt water on inside. Okay, such that, and you mix sugar and salt in such a way such that density of outside and inside is same. But now advantage with sugar water is advantage with salt water is they have now conductivity, and sugar water has almost no conductivity because of very little charges present in sugar, and salt water has strong conductivity because of large polarity. So now if we have a conductivity probe over here, so with known calibration of conductivity probe by calculating the amount of increase in conductivity, you can calculate back how much amount of fluid has gone out. Okay, and with that you can study the human wake in the hospital-like scenarios. Okay, so now this is again entrained volume of fluid which has come out with the cylinder. and this is the human speed. So with no curtain, you have exchange, behind the cylinders. Now, when you put curtain, there is huge cut in the exchange behind the cylinders because of the presence of curtain. It's almost 50%. So the maximum effectiveness which you can achieve with cylinders with the presence of air curtain is roughly 50%. So 50% of wake can be cut due to presence of cylinders, due to presence of air curtain. So now if you look at some temporal evolution which we saw in the video, is like you have jet air curtain which is separating two sides, and once cylinder comes in, it stops the curtain or it blocks the curtain. Now due to that, some fluid can exchange, and by the time curtain is also establishing, but by the time curtain is completely established at the bottom, there is a huge exchange which has already taken place behind of human weight. And these are now for different non-dimensional velocity and for different non-dimensional deflection modulus. But what typical you can notice is, like, as you increase velocity, here you see you have very little weight which has come in. Here you have, as velocity is increasing, it's relatively more, it's much more, and it's much higher at much higher velocity. And obviously the typical wake is like, they expand. So this is the top view. So the wake expands in the span-wise plane because of the entrainment and exchange with the surrounding fluids due to eddies present over there. And this is the establishment. So if we see the establishment of jet when there is no cylinder or human weight, it takes some time to establish, which is about 0.45, something like that. But with cylinder, in the presence of cylinder or in the presence of human weight, establishment time increases, and it almost increases linearly with increase in cylinder velocity. And this is a PIV image, particle image velocimetry, which I'll talk in slightly more detail when I talk about measurement techniques. And the first thing to look at over here is when cylinder is approaching, it pushes the jet, but you can very clearly see the eddy present in the jet over here. Okay, so these are the eddies in the curtain, and it's pushed because of the induced velocity by the cylinder or by the human. And once cylinder is passed, some wake is entrained in the wake of the cylinder, but you can see now very strong eddy, which is much stronger than the eddy size which you see over here in the typical curtain case. And at much larger time, they are again established, but you have some induced velocity in the wake direction. So this is the contrast between the dye visualization which we saw and in the PIV. And you have entrainment over here, because as you can't see velocity over here, you can't see velocity in this direction, but in PIV you can see we have a strong induced velocity in the wake of the cylinder. So now we'll look at some numerical simulation on air curtain. So this is at relatively smaller deflection modulus. So you have this air curtain which is separating two sides, and at higher deflection modulus, they establish it much faster and they are relatively much stronger. Now I have been talking about air curtain in laboratory scenarios. Now what we did is we installed air curtain in real buildings at University of Delft, and then we did all these measurements over here. So now we had simulation results, we had lab scale experiments results. Now we did some experiment at real scale and tried to compare all three of them. Okay. So now we had laboratory experiments. Now we did some real scale installation and real scale simulation over there. And this is the real scale setup which had been installed. And we varied this is the air curtain which releases an air jet to separate two sides. So this room was at temperature T1, this room was at another temperature T2, and we used air curtain to separate these two temperature, these two rooms with having different temperature. And we had modeled that at laboratory scale in water tank. And we tried to compare both of this. Okay, so here now again, now we have heat flux because here we have temperature difference. In the laboratory when we simulated due to density difference. So now some heat flux is coming in two rooms, Q1, Q2, Q3 is over here, and over time some Q4 and Q5 have been added into room in the experiment time. So we ran the experiment for some time T, capital T. In that time, how much heat was added in room, both the rooms, that is Q4 and Q5. And in the laboratory, we had two different density fluids with two openings. So now we are going to contrast between two and see that how these two relate, how well we can simulate real scale buildings in room. So as in real scale situations, usually people use climate separation efficiency because you are going to separate two different climates rather than effectiveness, which is very scientific word. A lot of real man might not appreciate that. They are more into efficiency and other things. So usually in the real world, people talk about climate separation efficiency, which is basically effectiveness multiplied by 100. Okay. So, and now these are with some openings also. Usually in rooms, what I showed you is you had just curtain and everything else was closed. But in real room, that's not the case. You will always have some windows and other things. So for ventilation. So what is the effect of those windows on effectiveness? Those were studied over here. And one thing to note, as you increase the openings, and because of that, the neutral level changes. That has huge effect on effectiveness. Then also some experiments were done, and then that's in dimensional way. And then we non-dimensionalize over here with neutral heights. Then all the data seems to scale like it has scaled for lab scale measurements. And again, we did some simulation there with ventilation. The previous result which I showed you was without ventilation. And then these are the simulations with ventilations. And then flow structures of the simulation and experiments were relatively similar. So the breakdown of curtain and establishment of curtain and deflection modulus, those were very similar. And then also some experiments were done with heated air curtain because, so imagine cold climate. So your inside room is heated at some temperature and outside is cold. And you cannot take cold fluid and blow on some human because then they won't feel comfortable. You have to heat it. But the moment you heat the curtain, there is some buoyancy upward. Okay, that is going to negate the momentum flux which you have used to push your curtain inside. So we studied the effect of that. So I won't go into nitty-gritty and details of it, but we had some experiments, some lab scale experiments, and some CFD results for that. So basically what I tried to convey from here is like, first I tried to explain you some basic building flows like gravity currents and other things, and looked into some experiments and simulation results to see that how do flow takes place. Then we came up with if we put air curtain separation barrier between two, how well can we separate these two environments such that energy loss is minimal and air quality is maintained. So that is first. And second, with the uses of that, we also talked about the application of air curtain in hospital rooms in COVID-like scenarios. And we saw that there is reduction in contaminant transport by about 50% over there. And then I showed the PIV structure, which is an interesting problem because you have jet, which is one canonical flow problem. You had human wave, which is second good canonical problem. And third, the flow due to density difference. And when we combined all these three, there was a complicated interaction of wake, curtain or jet, and gravity current. And we tried to study that and its implication for real world problems. Now let's look at another problem, ventilation protocol. As I was telling you, ventilation is important for maintaining good health or minimal, required CO2 level, as well as how do we use for minimal energy demand. I was talking about cold crunch when I started talking about climate change, right? Because if the global temperature is going to increase, everybody is going to need cold. So they are going to put energy on cold, cooling rooms. Because 95% of our time we spend inside in a building. That's very important. 95% of our time we spend inside the buildings. So then human comfort over there is very important. But with that, we also need to be careful about climate and other things, such that we don't go into a irreversible loop of heating the climate more and more, such that one day it becomes non-livable. Okay, So why do we need ventilation? First is, if we don't ventilate the room, there will be higher CO2 levels in the room, which will cause suffocation. And with the standard guidelines by different agencies, it's important that we have fresh air intake in the room. Second, if you don't ventilate room, if it's hospital or any other scenarios, then pathogen levels are going to go up. Okay, so then we need to ventilate it to remove the pathogen levels. Okay. Third, if we don't ventilate room, then there will be a lot of heat. I was telling you, right? We all are releasing 100 watt every time. So then it will become suffocating. So we need to ventilate it to release that energy, that amount of heat which we are releasing. Okay. So for this broad things, we need to ventilate our room. Now, let's look at different ventilation guidelines around the world. So there are some ventilation guidelines from WHO and then one from Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, which you guys might have heard about. Dr. Fauci did a tremendous job in COVID time, being the director of CDC at that point of time. Okay, and some of you, if you haven't heard about Dr. Fauci, read his work, what he did in COVID time. That man didn't sleep, multiple nights to take care for his country.
Sir, you have been muted. Dr. Jha, you have been muted just now.
Okay. Okay.
Now it's fine. Now it's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
Till what point I was audible?
Just a few seconds back.
Okay. So some of you who haven't studied about Dr. Fauci and his work, I sincerely urge you all to read his work. He did a tremendous job in COVID time. And he also showed the path to a lot of researchers that what responsibility we have when our country goes through disaster or this world goes through disaster. So that big shoulder and big responsibility Dr. Fauci showed in the COVID time. So go through, read some of his work. Then in United Kingdom, we have Health and Safety Executive, which puts ventilation guidelines. In Europe, it's Joint Research Center Environmental Institutes. They have some ventilation guidelines. But now the question is, yes, we have a lot of ventilation guidelines from the Western world or from the global organizations. But are these directly applicable in India? Okay. So, and I'm sure that most of our country climate is tropical. So we have multiple climate and our air pollution is very high. So can we apply them directly? Okay. So let's look at some typical scenarios which our country have compared to most of the Western world. Obviously, one is the peak temperature over here is very high in our country. Second is varying climate. Okay, so the ventilation guidelines which is there in summer is not directly applicable when it's winter. Okay, so you have different ventilation guidelines for that. And a lot of ventilation guidelines from the West, which is mostly cold climate, cannot be directly applied over here. And we also have humid climate. Okay, so there are various climate. Okay, warm, humid, hot, dry, and there is combination of all four. Okay, warm and humid, warm and dry. Okay, cold, dry, cold, humid. So in different climatic situations, and how do we have different ventilation guidelines? So you can see climate zone map over here. So we have various climates. So this red is hot and dry. This one is warm, humid. This is composite climate. So we have like from Delhi and around this place, we have composite climates. Then you have some places over here which is temperate, and then some places on the top is very cold. Okay, so then how do we come up with the ventilation guidelines when we have multiple climates? And not only multiple climates, we have huge air pollution. See the air pollution. The air pollution level in India is way higher than a lot of other countries. Okay, so I was telling you, right? If you open the window when air pollution is very high, a lot of bad air is going to go in. So the filter, what you have put in, and it has to do way more work now. Okay, so then how do we couple these two? So that becomes a complicated problem. And I had already told you that in some way building flow is way more complicated than rocket science. Okay, so coupling these with building flow is a tough task. Okay, so first thing is major challenges in direct implication of those things is we have outdoor pollution is very high. We have multiple climates, and most of the ventilation, most of the buildings in our country is still naturally ventilated. Okay, so air condition hasn't penetrated still too much. Okay, and also the building space. So in our country, as the population density is relatively high, so a lot of buildings are stacked one after the other. So they don't have enough space even for ventilation. So your window is touching with somebody's else's wall. Then if you open the window, there is no meaning for that. Okay, from where fluid will come in, wind will come in. You need some space for wind to flow in. Okay, so then this becomes a tricky situation, and we need to work on that. And then there are a few extreme examples where occupancy level is very high. Okay, so imagine a dormitory. In one room there are 25 students sitting over there, or imagine one air conditioned train express where there are 72 people in one compartment. Okay, and then those are not healthy places to live in because carbon dioxide over there is so high, and even there is one guy who have some infectious disease, it's going to spread very fast over there. Even COVID-like situations in hospitals, there were a lot of patients there, right? So then quality is going to go severely bad in these scenarios. So occupancy level, air pollution, climate, and building construction are the four major complications which we have in our country, and young scientists like all the participants need to participate over here to understand our problem and come up with solutions. Okay, so and then you have various building types. You have schools, you have hospitals, office space, residential area. So all of them have different occupancy level and different requirements. So ventilation has to be designed based on the implementation area also. So now basically what you want to do is you want to get in fresh air, and you have to make sure that those airs are relatively clean. So now the concept comes of blue outdoor and green indoor. Green basically means clean air. Blue basically means dirty air. So even though your outdoor is dirty, how you can have clean indoor? Because I was telling you 95% of time we spend inside. So how can we have clean indoor? Okay, and that's the humongous task. We have been working on broadly this area. So, and now ventilation, right? When we say ventilation guideline, then it's about ventilation rate, which is the some coefficient multiplied by area multiplied by wind velocity or the driving velocity. If it's a stack, then it's stack, or if it's mechanical ventilation, then there will be the velocity induced by mechanical ventilation. So this can either be wind velocity or a stack velocity or velocity induced by mechanical installations. So how can fluid dynamicists help? As this is a fluid dynamics conference, so now I'll talk about what fluid dynamicists can do. We can do full-scale experimentation with actual design parameters to optimize what are the actual optimal parameters doing full-scale experimentation. Then there can be lab-scale experiments where you model it in lab, and modeling a real-scale experiment in lab is relatively easy with water because the density of water is 15 times of that of air. So you can reduce the length scale by 15 times, because such that your Reynolds number is same. So if you have to say simulate 3-meter room in water, you can directly scale into 3-meter by 15. Okay, so roughly 20 centimeter tank would simulate your 3-meter room in a building. Okay, so if any of you have any doubt about some of these some of these experimentation, you can get in direct touch with me if you want to start some experiments. I can help you with lab scale models. How can we simulate real scale situations in lab scale? But the thing is, 3-meter room can be simulated in lab with 20 centimeter tank. Okay, that's one point to keep in mind, that and that reduces your lot of experimental complications. And then to simulate wind and other things, we can do wind tunnel experiments. All that comes from experimental side. So, and these three are broad things. And then possible pathways. So this I only talked about experiments, but then there is numerical simulations, and then reduced order modeling, and then you have field experiments. Over here, I didn't talk about any field experiments. Okay, one can do even experiments in field for air pollution at traffic and at roads to see how air pollution is behaving. If there is some stubble burning in a farmland in Punjab, one can go and study there that how that farmland behaves. Once it's burnt, how do this pollutant disperse in the atmosphere? Okay, so there are real scale experiments, there are reduced order modeling, there are numerical simulation, there are analytical work. So there is a big variety of work which one can do from the fluid dynamics side. But there is obviously a lot of work once you understand the problem better. You can also participate in policy intervention. Okay, so that is other part where you can participate once you understand this problem better, that how policy can be made with this. Okay, and once we do all that and understand ventilations and building flows, and then we can have recommendations. And with those understandings, if recommendation is in place, we can approach towards a sustainable world, which is very important in today's scenario. Sustainability is another big area. So air pollution and sustainability is two big areas in fluid dynamics, which I see will play a big role in the human civilization, not only from fundamental understanding. Okay, so now how do we set the ventilation guidelines if one has to set it? So first we need to understand the current ventilation guidelines. Then we get into indoor air quality guidelines. And once we understand indoor air quality guidelines and ventilation guidelines, and then we also have to now understand outdoor air pollution, and which is still not well studied and well understood. So once we understand this outdoor and indoor, then one can come up with ventilation guidelines for indoor spaces. There have been a lot of studies in Delhi by some of our fellow researchers, which have shown that air pollution inside the building is higher than outside. Okay, so we are trying to reduce the air pollution inside because we spend 95% of time inside. But with real scale measurement, it has been seen that our inside air is way more polluted than outside. Okay, and as that's the case, we need to really work on it. Okay, and once we understand it, then we can now also implement some of the COVID-like situations, that if there is some spread of disease, or at least in hospitals, say even not in buildings. So if there is some infectious patient in a hospital, how do we ventilate over there? Okay, so what basically we need to consider is air pollution, infection control, climate change, indoor air quality, along with environmental health and wellness. Okay, because all these things at the end of the day is done for the health of the environment and wellness of human. And we need to be conscious about both. Okay, environmental health is as important as wellness of human. So that coupling between two is one part which we need to be conscious about. Okay, so these are the future directions where young people can work. Obviously, outdoor air pollution measurement, modeling, and analysis. But the moment we call outdoor air pollution measurement, a country like India is so vast that we need to develop low-cost sensor for air quality monitoring. So there is huge scope for low-cost sensor development for air quality monitoring. Then experimental fluid dynamics, where I showed about different lab experiments, real experiments, wind tunnel experiments, and then obviously CFD. Then apart from that, there are doctors who can work on virology for infection control in building. Then there is building simulation, because I was telling you building is a complicated problem. So then there are reduced order model to simulate building, to work on thermal comfort, solar radiation, energy efficiency, and all that is physics part of it. And there is chemistry part of it also, because these pollutants, they go through chemical reactions. Okay, and there are gaseous pollutants. Their chemistry of volatile organic matter. So say you are sitting in a room, you have sofa, you have carpet, you have paint on the wall. Everything is going. Every one of this is going to release some organic compounds. That is not good for our health. So that is other part. And with all this, what we try to couple is we work on environmental health and wellness of human. Okay, so that's the first part. Now I'll talk about measurement techniques, what different measurement techniques can be used. So measurement techniques for a stratified flow, because most of our building flow is stratified in nature. So obviously first thing comes is particle image velocimetry. So particle image velocimetry, what we do is we seed the particles in such a way that those particles are faithful tracer of flow. I repeat, those particles are faithful tracer of flow. And how do you make sure they are faithful tracer of flow? First is density matching. Second is Stokes number. Okay, so Stokes number should be much smaller than 1, and density of the fluid and density of the particles should be very similar. Okay, once that is done, then that particle is seeded into flow. And now once particle is put in over there, then you need to see those particles. For that you need illumination. You need to illuminate those particles. You need some source of light like laser, or some even you can do with some halogen and other things also. There are smart ways to do that. So you need to make a slit and focus the light. But you can do even in cost effective way. You may not always buy laser because sometimes that might cost 20-30 lakh. So there are ways to do even PIV with halogen and all. So once those particles are eliminated, you need to image them. So you need camera for visualization. And then is image acquisition or registration. So once that part is done, then you need to take those images for image improvement. So like you sample the image, quantize them, enhance the quality. Once that pixelization is done, then you need to do interrogation. So you select the interrogation area, do correlation, get the estimated location of the moved particles. Then again you do validation. Again you go back to analysis. And once you go through enough iterations and you have reached the right accuracy, then you get those results and look into the flow field over there. Okay, so how basically it's done is you take image at time t equal to 0, and then you take image at time t equal to delta t. So you take two images at a separation of delta t, and then you correlate these two images and get the correlation plan. That will be something look like this. So at what distance you have maximum correlation. Once that correlation is done, then you know the location where these particles has moved in. So then you go and get the delta x, delta y, delta t. Delta t you know from your setting, from your hardware setting. Delta x, delta y you know from correlation. And once you know delta x, delta y, and delta t, and you assume that at such small delta t, there is only those are linear. So it's just delta x by delta t. Okay, so you assume that particle in that small time has moved linearly from location A to location B. Okay, and once you do that, you get the velocity, and this is the typical velocity which is taken from Hu et al. 2006. That you have image at time t naught, you have image at time t naught plus 10 microsecond, and then once you do correlation, you get the velocity all around the area. Again, there are open source software for this like PIV Lab, OpenPIV. So you need not even work on these softwares. So technically one can start doing PIV. You have a camera, get one camera, and buy one halogen lamp, get some open source PIV software, and start getting the flow field around the area of interest on which you are working. So and sometimes it can be as simple as this. Analysis is big part where your expertise in fluid dynamics will come. That I'm sure you guys are good at. So, but then experimental setting up or hardware setting is not that difficult, or even software setting is not that difficult. So one can set even at any place, with some small amount of money. So that was the PIV behind an airfoil. And PIV can also be used for environmental flow. But obviously, the moment you want to do PIV for environmental flow, then your area will become very large because flow structures are typically large. So now say imagine if you want to do PIV in 1 meter by 1 meter. Okay, if you want to do PIV in 1 meter by 1 meter, then obviously your halogen and all won't work. Then you need high power source, high power light source. So something like say 200 millijoule per pulse of laser, something like that, say for 1 meter by 1 meter. But those are available in the market. Okay. So by research grant, one can get money and buy those lasers. Then you can do PIV in environmental flows with such vast area. So here you need large, huge power of laser or powerful laser, and you need high resolution camera. Okay, so if your area of interest is small, you can work with say 1 megapixel and all. But if you want to do 2 meter by 2 meter, then obviously you need 10 megapixel, 20 megapixel camera, so that you have enough resolution at the smallest scale to resolve it. Or if you're not interested in the small scale, it's not like simulation where you don't resolve, you have a problem. Okay, you have a problem because your physics won't be right. That problem you don't have with experiments. You're not able to resolve doesn't mean that your physics is wrong. It only means that your physics is still right because it's experiments. Your physics is always right. Okay, whatever is happening is truth. Okay, experiments are real truth. Okay, what you are able to resolve and how you analyze them and how you comment on that depends on your expertise. And for that, whatever scale you can resolve, you keep in mind that you are only able to resolve that much of scale and comment smartly on those structures. And if you are able to do that, you are still fine. You are still fine. You did not resolve all the scale in experiment if you are not interested at such scales. But be cautious that be informed that you haven't resolved that scale. That's it. Now another thing is planar laser-induced fluorescence. So earlier I talked about you put particles and track the particles to get the velocity. Because we all know, like, in solids we look at deformation, in fluids we look at velocity. Okay, so velocity is the one of the most crucial information in fluid dynamics. So PIV is the one way to get the spatial distribution of velocity field. Okay, now other thing is you can also look into for mixing and all. Better than PIV is like laser-induced fluorescence to look into broad structures and mixing. Okay, so what basically you do is you put some dye, fluorescent dye, and again you shine it with laser. Now here you need laser or required light source which can excite your fluorescence, because fluorescence has one excitation and emission spectra. So then here you have to choose light source wisely, such that you have enough energy in the excitation range. And in the emission spectra, you need to put some optical filter such that you get the spectra from dye. Okay, or you get the light released from the fluorescence of dye. And once you are able to do that, then again you can do another kind of wonders here. You can look at structures like in stratified flows. Mukherjee and Balasubramanian from IIT Bombay have shown homoweights, KH instability, strong KH instability. Okay, in a stratified environment, they have shown that. And this is like now two gravity current is coming from two sides, and they are colliding over here, forming colliding gravity currents that is used to model avalanche. It's been done by Zhang et al. In 2018. So here you can now study mixing and broad structures from LIF. So based on your interest, you can choose PIV and LIF. Okay, and another easy technique is shadowgraphy. So if you have density gradients, the moment you have density gradients, most of the time you have refractive index mismatch. Okay, and now due to change in refractive index, light rays will bend differently, and you can track that to get the different density packets where are they. So with this again you can comment on if there are two density fluids they are mixing, you can study gravity current with shadowgraphy. You can study two different density fluids mixing with shadowgraphy. Those has been done over here by Frank and Linder in 2014. Okay, so these were the building flows and stratified flows, their measurements. Now I'll go to geophysical flows, mostly towards oceanic flows, and mostly I'll talk about bubbly turbulent flow over here. Okay, so now we have, till now we were mostly focusing on, there is flow in air. Now oceanic flows, there is flow in water, and you have some entrapped air. How do they respond? Now we are going to study that.
So Narsingh, I think Dr. Narsingh, before going, we can take some questions based on the environmental flow if someone wants to ask.
Yes, please go ahead. It would be my pleasure to take the questions on the same. Yes. Yeah.
So then we start the another important topic on the bubbly turbulent flow on it. So participants, are you interested to If you have some doubt, please go ahead and ask the question. Hello?
Sir, in that diagram you had shown that air vent was there.
Sir, please briefly introduce yourself and ask a question.
Sir, myself Sajjan Lal, working as assistant professor in Thakur College of Engineering. My question was that diagrams you had shown about the air vent, which stops the vent if any person enters a room, and if I want to stop the flow of air from inside and outside of the room, air vent we have put. So, but when we put the air vent, it stops the flow of air from inside and outside. But in that case, the percentage of carbon dioxide will increase in the room, madam, and that will be again harmful for the patients or the person living in the room or office.
So once you put air curtain, right? So
Yes.
if we have a look at it. So see here. So once you put air curtain, some amount of fluid is always going inside.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So that much amount of fresh air replenishment is already there. And the typical way to do that for any building, right? Now as it's cold, there is something which is maintaining cold temperature, no?
Yes, sir.
So the mixing is taking place from where cold fluid is coming in. Okay. So in a building, when we say it should be well ventilated, means usually it's in recirculation mode, but after certain interval of time, building maintenance system, BMS, they open the fresh air intake and take the fresh air and mix that with this and release some air from here. Okay, so that your net volume is conserved, but you keep adding fresh air into your system. So all the big buildings, what you see over here, right? So some buildings like this, those have building maintenance system. Okay, so they have air condition and other things. There what they do is they have fresh air intake. So say every 1 hour they will refill 10 meter cube. Okay, so 10 meter cube of the air from room they will take out and throw, and 10 meter cube of fresh air from atmosphere they will take in through filter and add into the room. Okay, and that 10 meter cube, that amount is being decided by that ventilation guidelines I was telling you, that how many occupants are sitting there, and based on those occupants, how much you want to replenish, and we want to maintain temperature and other things. Based on those conditions, amount of ventilation is being decided, and that much amount of fresh air it has to intake. Is that clear?
Okay, sir.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the nice question. Yeah, that's one important aspect that we have to keep adding fresh air.
Any other question, participants? Please go ahead. Yeah. Vishal, please briefly introduce yourself and ask your question.
My name is Vishal Sankpal. I'm from NIT Rourkela, a student of the cryogenic engineering. Means I want to ask, means in air curtain, continuous flow is necessary, or means for some time we can allow the flow and we can stop and then it is possible?
That's a nice question. It's possible because it's run by a motor, right? So you can have, so a lot of time, the best way to do that is once door is, so if you go over here, why did we put air curtain basically? Because we opened the door, okay? So a lot of this now has door opening sensor, okay? The moment door opens, air curtain will switch on. The moment door closes, air curtain is switched off. So there is typically a sensor placed at the door. The moment you open it, that sensor is activated and that runs the air curtain. The moment you close the door, there is no need for air curtain now. So then air curtain is automatically switched off. Okay.
Okay, sir. And sir, one more question I want to ask.
Please go ahead.
Sir, means air curtain means device should be used with the air room ventilation room only, no? Means ventilation setup. As you told for before question that the room required a separate cooling system. So,
Yeah, so
it has to be used in combination, I think.
So it's obviously in combination with that. So now it depends which kind of room do we have. There are some room where, it's only one isolated room. So everybody, So that big room, like we call centralized air conditioning. There you have building maintenance system. Everything is done centrally, and then it's been distributed everywhere. Okay, but most of us typically lives in 2-bedroom house, right? And then you don't have central thing, and then it's locally. So we have ventilation in our room also, and we need to install air curtain also if outside air is very bad, or or some small industrial setup, or imagine a shop. Okay, so if you go to US, Europe, then in most of the shop you see air curtain. So there is one shop, they have ventilation also, they have air curtain also. Then this ventilation and air curtain becomes important. But if it's centrally air conditions, then it's mostly to at the door or in the hospitals, which is centrally air conditioned. But still you need to stop the contaminant transport, so you put it over there.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
So, any other question, participants? Hello, Dr. Narsingh, one question I have in my mind. So basically, this the ventilation and the mixing, it has the gravity current, which you have mentioned in the talk. It's driven by the density difference, right? Like
Yes.
the outside is lighter, inside is denser. So what
Yes.
are its mixing implication when the situation is revert? Like let's say somewhere in the Kashmir you're doing, the outside is cold and inside is warm, and somewhere where the density difference is negligible, like the favorable weather. Then how this mixing performance will change if we try to focus it on for the different, as you mentioned in the India, the weather is very different at different part.
So for
what
so
will you
for-
comment on?
So there is for non-dimensional density difference, right? G prime, G delta rho by rho. Okay. So till the time that is matched, so gravity current it does not see because it's mixing on both sides, right? So either rho L, it's on which side it does not matter. Okay, rho L, rho D, because those are open. Okay. So till the time the size of both sides is symmetric, the gravity current dynamics is dependent on non-dimensional G prime. Okay, delta rho by rho. Okay, because rho is absolute density, which is important, and delta rho is the density difference. Okay, so till the time, but as rho itself changes, right? Because if temperature is very high, then G prime, G delta rho, even delta rho is same, but if rho changes, your dynamics will change. Okay, because net gravity changed. Okay, so and that will play a role. So one has to see the same G prime. Okay? So if G delta rho by rho is same, which will obviously be different from the Western countries because absolute rho will be different in cold climate and different in hot climates. Okay, so because mean temperature in UK, the outside temperature, inside temperature usually you maintain at 20, outside says 10, 5, something like that. Over here, if we see in cold, hot climates over here, the outside is 45, inside says 30. Okay, so absolute density changed. Based on that, your gravity current dynamics will change. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. So do we assume that when the density difference is negligible, then mixing could be like minimal, that we can say?
But if density difference is negligible, then there won't be any gravity current. So then mixing will be negligible. So then there is no forcing available there. Then it will be a static fluid. So if you just put two rho D and rho L, even they have different contaminant. Okay, so one is salt water, another is sugar water of same density kept over there. Then it's all only because of diffusion and other things, because there is no strong driving force. So driving force in fluid dynamics for common thing, it's either it has to be pressure or it has to be wind, or it has to be some stratification. So either you put some pressure or you put some stratification, or if there is some wind. These three only can induce the pressure, induce the flow. Otherwise, most of it may be some diffusion.
Participant. Yes, yes. Yes.
Yeah, I have one clarification.
Please.
Please.
So adding to your previous questions, in one slide you mentioned like the contaminants outside the atmosphere seems to be low when it is when the fluid dynamics is seen inside a room. Let me give some example. Like let us consider some 10 pollutants or whatever it may be, carbon dioxide or NOx or SOx, whatever it may be. Assume some 10 particulates or 10 to 15 particulates. When it is confined in a room, it has a tendency to be concentric. Rather than we put it in outside in an open atmosphere, it used to get dilute. So I don't find any abnormality when you have the same number of contaminants. In my case, if it is concentric or more compared to the outer environment. If I'm wrong, please throw some light on it, sir.
No, you are completely right, because it's measurement, so there is no abnormality in that. But what we want, even our outdoor is polluted, we want our indoors to be clean. In that sense, our indoor is more polluted than outdoor. So it's not about abnormality, it's about we need to be cautious such that we need to keep our indoor clean. So that's a problem to work on, that how can we keep it inside. There is no problem with measurement. There is no abnormality with anything. It's just that is undesirable. That is not a preferred situation to have.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So that now we need to set up flow in our room in such a way that our indoor air quality is better than outdoor.
Understood, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
So any other question, participants? If not, then let's discuss the next topic. Dr. Narsingh, we can, I think, go ahead with the next.
Yeah. Okay. So now next topic is bubbly turbulent flow, which has motivation from geophysical flows. So bubbly turbulent flow you might find around the ship propeller, where you have cavitation and you have some bubbles over there, or it entrains some bubble from the free surface, or some breaking waves. Okay, near the shore you might see way more, and then you must have seen all of this. Okay. And this plays a huge role in mixing and other things, because bubble induced a strong velocity which helps in mixing and other things. And in bubbly turbulent flow on the ship is also used for drag reduction for ships and submarines. So basically bubbly turbulent flow, when you put bubbles in turbulent flow, the first, because of the presence of second phase, they modifies the density and viscosity, but which is not very strong at low void fraction. But what is seen is like the presence of these bubbles strongly modifies the vertical structure. And vertical structures are the building blocks of turbulence. Okay. And as if that is affected, if vertical structures present in the turbulent flow is affected, that will affect wall drag, mass, momentum, and energy transfer in turbulent flows. Okay. So with those motivations, we want to study the interaction of bubbles with these vertical structures in turbulent flow. Okay. And later we would like to relate that to mass, momentum, and energy transfer in turbulent flow. Okay. So now if you look at vertical structure in turbulent flows, this is the study of Wu and Moying. This is just plain turbulent boundary layer, single phase. Now you see a lot of hairpin kind of structures over here. Okay, and those hairpins are having very high number density, but number density is one thing. Second thing what they have is they have a lifetime. Lifetime means they are being generated and then they die, and before their death they regenerate next structures. Okay, so there is a life cycle associated with these structures, and these structures among themselves, they interact non-linearly, as one can expect, being the Navier-Stokes nonlinear. And then you have now eddy-eddy interaction, which is nonlinear. And then you have eddy-bubble interaction, which is nonlinear. And then you have bubble-bubble interaction. So now what if you put lot of multiple bubbles in turbulent on the air, it becomes a really complicated fluid dynamics problem to study because of these complications of regeneration and nonlinear interaction of eddy bubble and bubble. Now to simplify this problem, what you do is like you take, so we had three problems: high number density of bubble, high number density of a structure, and lifetime. Okay, so now to simplify, you simplify all this problem. So rather than multiple structure, take one single vertical structure, say a vortex ring. Take one bubble rather than multiple bubbles. Now start with one bubble. So one vertical structure, vortex ring, one bubble, and lifetime was the third problem. So these vortex rings have a fairly large lifetime as compared to this interaction time scale. So on the time of their interaction, you can assume that their lives are not being affected. With those simplified assumptions, we'll look into interaction of a vortex ring with a bubble to simplify the bubbly turbulent flow study. Okay. Now it has been shown in past in channel flow with numerical simulation that when you put bubbles, this suppresses the vertical structures present over there. So you see the vertical structure over here. Okay, they are suppressed because of now obviously the parameter, one parameter which will come in over here as you have bubble and flow structure is flow inertia by bubble surface tension, that is Weber number. Okay, and they showed that presence of bubble reduces in strophy and wall shear. Okay, so and now we want to study it experimentally with simplified. And then there are some experiments which showed some local fragmentation of core, but these fragmentation healed as time passed. So there were no permanent deformation of vortex ring due to presence of bubble at very low void fraction. So void fraction over here is 10⁻⁻⁶. And this is a numerical simulation by Revuelta in 2010, where what they studied is they studied bubble fragmentation due to presence of vortex ring. Okay, and they mostly focused on bubble fragmentation. What we are interested in the vortex ring and bubble and look into both, properties of bubble and properties of vortex ring. So we varied the strength of vortex ring, which is varied from 30 to 500 centimeters square per second. And we also varied the non-dimensional core radius. So over here, one is ring radius, that is capital R, and then there is core radius, which is small r. And the ratio of 2 is very important parameter because that will decide are the thin core ring, are they separated apart? These two cores, these two cores, are they very separated apart or they are very close? Okay, so if when they come very close, then the dynamics changes. Okay, instability characteristics and other things. And from the bubble side, we took air bubble and the surface tension is known 72 millimeter per meter. And bubble diameter we fixed at 6 millimeter, which gave us a void fraction of 0.1. Okay, so if you look at non-dimensional number, Weber number was varied from 3 to 400 and volume ratio was fixed at 0.1. And these numbers were chosen because in practical bubbly turbulent flow, these are the typical numbers which you find. Okay. So now let's look at vortex ring. So this is the typical vortex ring which is formed by a cylinder piston system, and you have two induced velocity like this in azimuthal direction. So this is the top view of vortex ring. And now this is usually generated by pushing a compact volume of fluid, and due to self-induced velocity it propagates in streamwise direction in this in axial direction. And once this becomes these rings are they are unstable, so these vortex ring can also be laminar, transitional and turbulent vortex, which I'll show from my study. So first, let's look at when they become unstable, these kind of waves develop at the vortex ring core. And these waves, if you remember classical instability problems, first thing what you do when you want to check flow is unstable or not, you put some waves on it and try to see the amplification of those waves. If those waves are amplified, you say flow is unstable, and those waves are stable. The flow is called stable if those waves doesn't grow in time. So now let's look at classical, you must have studied it, but now let's look at wave and see how do they break down when we call that these flows are unstable. Okay. So now let's look at this video. So this vortex ring, this is the vortex ring which is tracked by a bubble. Okay. So just focus on these lines, these circular lines, and let's have a look at it. Okay. Now you see some waves are coming in over here. And now you remember this is a classical, instability problem. You put in some wave. So most unstable waves are coming in over here. Okay, now you can very cleanly see these waves. Okay, and once you can see these waves, now you will see the breakdown of. Oh, you guys can't see the video?
Hello, videos. Yeah, videos is not going on.
Okay, just give me a minute. So I'll try to share this video. Okay, so video is not going. So can you guys see the video now?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, please have a look now. So now I'll show you instability of a vortex ring. So this is the vortex ring which is being formed over here, which is circular in shape now. So we are tracking the vortex core of vortex ring. Okay. Now once you see it's going to be unstable, some wave is going over here. Now you see some very nice waves have been grown up over here. Okay. Now see there are some kinks which is also developing at the wave. Okay, which is the start of the breakdown. Before the breakdown, they develop the kink, singularity kind of thing. Okay, and now see after some point they become turbulent now. They become turbulent. Okay. So I'll just repeat this video. So laminar and then some waves are developing. These waves are developed like classical waves and then they start breaking down and they're broken down. This becomes random. Okay. So with that now, so on vortex ring, that's another interesting thing. You can span the range of laminar to turbulent rings. Okay, so vortex ring was generated by a cylinder piston system, and we generated vortex ring through this. And then there was a place to inject air bubble, which was injected before the vortex ring. So bubble is over here, and vortex ring is going to interact with these bubbles. And we did flow visualization using high-speed camera at 2000 frames per second. And we did time-resolved PIV because you can see these interactions are very time-dependent. So we had to do PIV at roughly 5000 hertz to capture the dynamics of this. Okay, so vortex rings basically looks like this. This is taken from Wikipedia. And now we'll look at the interaction of vortex ring with bubbles at high Weber number and high Reynolds number. Obviously, volume ratio is fixed, and this is thin core rate. So we will see this is now the front view. So earlier what I showed you vortex ring, that was from top to show these waves. Now I'll show you the front view to study the interaction. Okay. So let's look at the interaction. So you will see vortex ring, which is tracked by small bubbles, and there is big bubbles, which is left for interaction. So this is vortex ring over here, and it is interacting with the bubble, and these bubbles are expanding in azimuthal direction. Then they contract slowly, and then they expand. They contract in the azimuthal direction, then they expand again, and then slowly they start breaking down. Okay, so I'll just repeat this. Vortex ring, bubble, capture, entrainment, expansion. Then they expand, stay there, and you can see some interface perturbations and other things. And then they contract, and then they expand again. Okay, so if you look at the top view, how does it look like? So this is a vortex ring which has been tracked by micron-sized bubbles, and there is large bubbles which is left for interaction. And these two interact, this bubble is captured in the vortex core, and then they start expanding in azimuthal direction, like we saw in the video last time. Here you can very clearly see surface waviness also. So now this is interface perturbation. So bubble breakup and all is also studied from here. Okay. So how do bubble break up in a vertical flow field, which has relevance to geophysical flows, and then at much later time these bubbles are broken down into smaller pieces. So now let's look at vorticity dynamics. So what you do is you cut this and you do planar time resolved PIV, and what you look at is this blue and red vortex core. So what you see over here is two vortex core. Okay, and they have rotation instructions. Okay, so one is clockwise, another is anti-clockwise, and they are convecting vertically upward. So and this scale is being moved. So you are always in the frame of the vortex and bubble because they are convecting vertically upward. So they are intact before interaction, and see how cleanly this bubble pierces the vortex core. And see now it's like this is liquid phase, this is gas phase. How gas phase is penetrating the liquid phase and it's affecting the vertical distribution in the liquid phase. Okay, that is, this is one thing which we should note. And then they go and sit inside the core, and after that they make these cores. So earlier, now here you had Gaussian distribution of vorticity. Now here you have azimuthal distribution of vorticity. Sorry, now here you have toroidal distribution of vorticity. So now you have two peak, one peak here and the peak here. And now that is shown to be, this annular core is shown to be more unstable compared to Gaussian core analytically. Okay, so now this core analytically is more unstable, as we'll see now. So now before seeing the core instability, let's look at bubble dynamics. So these bubbles are captured. So first thing what one can look at is captured time. Okay, and captured time over here will be balanced by a drag force, which is stopping for it, which is putting a resistance on it, and there is a capture force which is due to low pressure at the vortex core. It's trying to capture this, and the equilibrium of these two decides the dynamics of this. So one can capture, one can get the capture time from here, which we have skipped for now. Okay. And after that, we also looked into elongation rate. How do this elongation changes with Weber number, which is vortex ring inertia by surface tension. But now one question to ask is, like, it was captured in this direction. We know that bubble is captured at the vortex core due to presence of vortex core, due to presence of low pressure at vortex core. But why was it expanding in azimuthal direction? What creates the azimuthal asymmetry? Now to look at that, we started looking at pressure. So when bubble is outside, pressure over here is low. We know that due to this low pressure at the vortex core, bubble is sucked in. But then to explain the azimuthal expansion, now you look at azimuthal expansion. Okay, now bubble is captured inside the vortex core. But now you also see the moment bubble is captured inside the vortex core, the pressure field is modified. Okay, now pressure over here is almost pressure as the pressure outside. And pressure on the other core is still low. So if you look over here, pressure over here now has almost become pressure, atmospheric pressure, because of the capture. But over here, pressure is still low. And due to that, now you have azimuthal pressure gradient set up over there. Because of that, it expands in azimuthal direction. Now we got the scaling for this pressure difference, which is given by vortex strength and core radius. And now you see the difference in Weber number because of the difference in bubble dynamics at two different Weber numbers. When Weber number is small, you see this expands a little in azimuthal direction. But when Weber number is large, they almost cut just the 70% of the azimuthal expansion. And also you see the breakup dynamics. Okay, over here you have roughly 12 bubbles in equilibrium position. Here you only have 2 bubbles. Okay, so Weber number also affects the maximum azimuthal expansion. It affects the surface waviness, and it also affects the end equilibrium number of broken bubbles in the vortex. Okay, now as I showed you over there that we got the pressure difference based scaling for azimuthal expansion, and so if you look with Weber number, you have different expansion rate in azimuthal direction with time. Okay, but once you non-dimensionalize time with this pressure difference based time scale, because pressure difference is driving it in azimuthal direction. So if you take that time scale and non-dimensional like that, then you see all the azimuthal expansion collapses to a single line. Okay, not only expansion collapses, all the compression. Okay, this is compression, right? We saw that it expanded and it was compressing. When all the compression also have similar slope, okay, they also collapse to one line. So that is because once you non-dimensionalize the time, dimensional time with the pressure gradient space time scale, then all the data collapses to a single line of expansion and compression. Okay, another thing to look at is why do bubble break up? Okay, so obviously one thing you remember this waviness, right? So this waviness, you see that Kelvin wave, this wave is called Kelvin wave because it was formed by Lord Kelvin. So, and these Kelvin waves, right, you see the necking and breakdown is taking place due to Kelvin waves. Okay, but then if that's so, the number of broken bubbles should be equal to number of Kelvin waves. Okay, but if you look at that, so this is number of Kelvin waves and this is number of broken bubbles. Okay, so we saw that initiation was taking place, initial breakup was taking place because of Kelvin waves, but end number of bubble is not affected by Kelvin waves. It's decided by something else, which is still a question that what decides this breakup of bubble and vertical flow. Okay. Now if we look at vorticity dynamics, which I showed you over here at large Weber number. And then now if you look, I was telling you, right, that once this bubble goes inside, now they have annular core rather than Gaussian core. So core over here is Gaussian, core over here becomes annular. And this annular core mathematically has shown to be more unstable. Now you see the shedding behind this core. Okay, so for no bubble case, there are no shedding because this is laminar ring. Okay, but behind once bubble is captured, you have a strong setting behind the vortex, and bubble is sitting over here, and because of that, you have a lot of vortices left over here. Okay, but at larger Weber number, when these rings are also turbulent in nature because of large ring Reynolds number, there is some setting behind the vortex ring because of the turbulent nature of the ring. But once bubbles are captured in, setting increases a lot because of the presence of the bubble. Now, once setting, we talk about setting and all, then the question to ask is vorticity is a local parameter, right? So you look at vorticity, but that is local. What happens to integral parameter? So integral parameter is vertical energy, which is defined as entropy, integral of omega squared dV. But as we have 2D planar information, we plot omega squared dA. So now let's look at what happens to entropy when, with time. So initially when bubble capture is not there is some entropy. And what happens to it when bubbles are captured inside. Okay. So open symbols are for the base case and filled symbols are for the bubble case. Filled symbol, circular filled symbol is for low Weber number. Square filled symbol is for high Weber number. Okay. So, and we see that at low Weber number, there is huge reduction in entropy, okay, which means that core is almost fragmented. Because reduction in entropy means that fragmentation of core, because circulation is conserved. Over here, if you look at circulation, circulation is conserved. So if you have conserved circulation, because there is nothing to kill circulation there, okay. So if circulation is conserved and entropy has reduced, which basically means that your core is fragmented, such that your net circulation is still there, but as its entropy is omega squared dV, those will reduce if your Gaussian is being distributed from Gaussian to angular. Okay. Now we look at some thick core rings when rings are very close and they are inherently unstable, and then you see the complete fragmentation of core because of presence of power. And these are the typical vertical structure you find in turbulent flow field. So in turbulence, the eddy which you saw mostly are thick core vertical structures. As they are thick cores, these thick core rings resemble them more, and with that we were able to show, like in previous study I showed you that in simulation and all they had observed in experiments and simulation in bubbly turbulent, real turbulent flow, they have observed suppression at large scale, enhancement at small scale, entropy reduction, and all those things we observed in idealized vortex ring bubble study. Here also we saw a reduction in strophy. Here also we saw that large scale is broken into smaller scale, means there is suppression at large scale, enhancement at a small scale, and so those things. So those were the idealized study. Now we do a real study. We completely do bubbly turbulent flow. So now you take a channel flow, fully developed turbulent channel flow. Now inject bubble over here and look into different dynamics. Okay, so we developed a fully developed turbulent channel flow, and we developed a bubble injection mechanism and looked into the fully developed turbulent channel flow 2-phase. Okay. So what basically we did is we varied large void fraction range, large Reynolds number range. Obviously that varied the Weber number and other integral parameters. And we also changed the gravity. Okay, so once you inject from top, gravity is towards the wall. When you inject from the bottom, gravity is away from the wall. And if you inject from both sides, then it's combination. Gravity for, towards the each side of the wall, they have gravity in different directions. So with that, we tried to create a regime map that how do bubbly turbulent flow occurs for different void fraction, different Reynolds number. And we had some interesting dynamics. Okay, so when Reynolds number is large and void fraction is small, you see these discrete bubbles, they go with the flow. And when Reynolds number is also large and void fraction is also large, amount of volume injected is also large, then you see these bubble void waves. You see air layering, you see void waves, and the dynamics of that was studied in details. Okay. And then we measured the pressure drop, which is measure of skin friction. So we measured skin friction to comment on what happens to skin friction in the presence of bubbles. And the motivation for that was, can it used for drag reduction for ships and submarines? So this was funded by Naval Research Board. Okay. And then what we observed is you have huge range where you have drag reduction. Okay, so this blue is for drag reduction, red is for drag increase. So for a small Reynolds number alpha range was there where we had drag increase. Those are not very relevant for naval application for drag reduction, but there were most other range where one can operate to get drag reduction. So for practical implementation, it will tell them that at what Reynolds number and what void fraction this would operate to achieve drag reduction. Okay, and then we varied a large parameter range for different void fraction alpha, different Reynolds number, different gravity orientation, and we saw a huge scatter and related it to bubble dynamics, bubble orientation, and it was published in Experiments in Fluids. So what we observed over here is like from vortex ring, we studied the interaction of vortex ring with a single bubble, and we showed that this is idealized study of bubbly turbulent flow. And we varied the Weber number range from 3 to 400 and void fraction of 0.1, which is typical of bubbly turbulent flow. We studied the bubble dynamics like entrainment into the vortex core, its expansion in azimuthal direction and pressure redistribution, and then breakup dynamics. And then we looked into vorticity dynamics, that what happens to, how did it penetrate the core, what happened to strophy, what happened to large scale, what happened to a small scale, and related all this to bubbly turbulent flow. And showed that it is similar to bubbly turbulent flow in the sense that we also observed breakdown of a structure here, reduction in strophy here, suppression at large scale over here, enhancement at a small scale over here. All this was published in JFM, and it was published also in Focus on Fluids, which in every issue JFM selects one focus articles from their issue. And then we did experiments with full scale bubbly turbulent flow, like 2-phase turbulent channel flow, and got the scattered lag plot and related to bubble distribution, size, shape, position, bubble Reynolds number, and we looked into pressure drop, resistance, and those things. And obviously, this volume of work is not possible with a good team of people with whom I have worked on or I had opportunity to work with. Professor Paul Linden, with whom I worked on environmental flow, and he's kind of founding father on this area. So that lab scale experiment I was talking about, water and all, he has developed those areas in 1970s. He worked with Turner, who was the founding father for plume theory and other things. And then I also collaborated with postdoc Daria, who was postdoc with Paul, and we both worked on this ventilation problem. Currently at IIT Delhi, I'm working with Vamsi on that simulation, which I showed you with gravity current and other things. And with Jay and Saison, we are working on air pollution related problem, like ventilation and air pollution I was talking about. That how can we get real scale data, data assimilation, low cost sensor development, measurement over the complete country, and influencing the policymakers. And obviously, I have students who works with me, and it's their hard effort, way more than what I do. So Tanmay is PhD student. I showed you some of his gravity current work. Hari is AmTech, who works on cloud dynamics and other things. Lillian was summer intern at DAMT, who initially helped me in setting up the air curtain. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for your kind attention, and it's a pleasure to have you over here. Go ahead with the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Narsingh. So, participant, with this, we can take questions on the various topic which Dr. Narsingh Jha has discussed with us. So, participant, please go ahead and share your doubts and questions if any is there with Professor Narsingh. Yes, anyone? Hello, Vishal, do you want to ask some question?
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
In this case, it is possible that cavitation take place.
So the pressure, if you see cavitation number, right? Pressure in the core is still not so low that cavitation can take place. But technically one can do that. One does that, You can generate very high strength vortex ring, such that pressure in the vortex core goes so low that you can create cavitation there. But that is one area where I haven't seen much work going on. So that is
like it could be a violent infusion, like already the bubble is there due to the low pressure, and then you introduce the atmospheric pressure level bubble.
But then the moment bubble goes in, right? You saw in the pressure control, the moment bubble goes in, it brings it to almost to atmospheric pressure.
Right.
Okay, then you have to release very small size. So the best is laser, usually people do for cavitation.
Yeah. So
locally,
so the situation may arise where some implode can happen, like the bursting of a cavitation bubble.
Yes.
Participation చేయాలంటే చెయ్యాలి అది.
Yeah, participant. Any other question? Sajan Lal, Mr. Sajan Lal, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, my question, information, isn't it? So, am I audible?
Yes, Sajan, you are.
There are some. I need to mute, I think, another participant. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so you talked about bubble and ring formation. So where does this bubble and ring formation take place? I think it will take place when exploding of water take place. Maybe in case of fountain where the water jumps over each other. Otherwise, if it's a linear flow of water, then I don't think that ring and bubble will form. So just can you clarify that?
Yeah, so when there is flow, right, most of the flow, so imagine there is flow over a ship, okay, so those are turbulent boundary layer, right, and the moment it's turbulent boundary layer, you have hairpin kind of structures over there, okay, so then idealized structure, vertical structure like hairpin, one can idealize in a way of like taking a vortex ring, and it has been used in the past to model the turbulent flow structures. Vortex ring has been widely used, by many researchers to study the idealized flow structure which is found in turbulent flows, like hairpin or Sue vortices. The advantage with vortex ring is it's very easy to generate in lab, and the other it's very robust structure, robust vertical structure. So any turbulent flow, any turbulent structures in the flow can be idealized using vortex ring. And most of the flow around us are turbulent in nature. So flow over a ship, flow over submarine, or even oceanic flows mostly are turbulent in nature. So the moment they are turbulent in nature, they have flow structures over there, and those flow structures can be idealized using vortex. Does that answer your question, Sarjan?
So, sir, in case of all turbulent flow, that bubble and ring is formed.
So in bubbly turbulent flow.
Only in bubbling turbulent flow. And when does this bubbling turbulent flow occurs? In case of like in fountain, it will occur there.
In ocean also, right? When gravity wave breaks, I showed you that slide. No, can you see my slide? Sajan, can you see my
Yes, sir,
slide?
yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir.
So see, right, when ocean waves break, no, they engulf a lot of air bubble over here.
Yes, yes.
So that's why you see mist, no, these are, bubbles with flow structures.
All right. So, okay, sir.
And even flow over a ship, it's intentionally been used now. It's white, this one, air lubricated ship. So they put air bubbles over here to reduce the drag of ship. Today I wanted to focus on environmental flows, so I didn't go towards ship drag reduction and other things. But that's big area over there. People use bubbles to reduce drag. You might have heard about supercavitation and other things.
Oh, yes, sir, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, participant, any other question? Hello. Okay. So, participant, if you have any other question, please go ahead and ask your doubts and question whatever you have with Dr. Narsingh. Dr. Narsingh, actually, I have several questions, but I think I would discuss to you over phone later on.
Sure. It would be my pleasure. Just give a call. Currently,
Yes,
we're busy for next few days. After that, I look forward to it.
Yeah. So I think the usual our discussion sometimes go very long. So let's keep it for some other time. So actually, Dr. Narsingh, we are very thankful for you. We are very thankful for this very interesting and very insightful talk. I guess our participant would have learned a lot from today's talk. And with this humble gratitude from our side, we end with today's session. So thank you, dear participants. Thank you, Dr. Narsingh.
Thank you, all the participants. And thank you, thank you, Professor Kishore. It was my pleasure talking to you and presenting my work. And I'm sure it will be helpful in some way to the participants. Thank you. Right. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks. So, participant, as usual, our next talk will start at 2 o'clock. So, kindly join us 15 minutes in prior to the next talk.